Today we're going to be making the Soft Tides scarf knit pattern. So some of you have joined us having bought the pattern online at my Etsy store, which is Artist's Heart Project, all one word. All the profits from that store then going directly to the Salvation Army's work in the country of Moldova. So everything that I get over the price and fees to Etsy, I make sure to get back to my dear friends, having served in that country for 3 years with the Salvation Army. Right now, I'm an officer stationed at the Salvation Army's Croc Center in Coeur d'Alene, where I have lots of responsibilities, but the one that's important to you today is the fine arts classes that I teach. So maybe you bought the pattern at Artist's Heart, and maybe you are taking an arts class with me, and to go along with the class, there's a video so that you can keep going back and go over those steps that are going to help you be successful with your art project. Or maybe you've just stumbled across the video. Either way, I know that you're going to fall in love with this pattern. It's been called the potato chip scarf at different times in history. Having done it many times, I've altered it just a little bit because we're learning the art of short rowing in knitting, and to be able not to leave gaps in knitting, I have a quick and actually it's a little bit easier than the wrap and movement. So you're going to be successful is what I'm saying. And you're going to love it so much that you're going to come back to it and make it again and teach it forward. And really, that's what this is all about. If you've joined in a group, know that what happens around the table between all of you and the way that you connect with one another, those relationships really is what coming together and doing arts with your hands is all about. You're producing something beautiful, but something else beautiful is happening around the table. Well, let me show you our scarf, and then we're going to get to work on it. One of the great things, and one of the reasons why I'm smitten by the pattern, is the presentation itself. It becomes a beautiful way even of giving it to somebody. A great way to use up those blended yarns, those yarns that colors seem to fade into one another. Wow, it just looks great. This one is made using two skeins of yarn. So I really wanted it to be a little bit longer so that I could wrap it around a couple times. And you can play with it, and you can just watch those colors. It almost, you're going to look like a painting, right? You have just become art as you wear your art yarn Soft Tides scarf. Well, let's talk about our materials and what we're going to be using so that we can get started together. It's a simple 7-row pattern. So if you can get down those 7 rows, you've got it. You've got it. It's just a repeat, repeat, repeat over and over until you've used up your 2 skeins. Now, maybe you don't want it to go around twice. You only want it to go around once. And mine goes down quite a bit, but maybe you want it just to go around once or just to hang with a particular dress. Maybe you want to use metallics. Maybe you want to use even a lace weight yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn, but if you use something that is lighter, what's going to happen then is you're going to get just a different feel. So you can wear it either in the winter when you want to be nice and toasty, or in the summer where you're just using it and wrapping it almost as a shawl. Well, knit on. Here we go. Let me show you some of the yarns that I chose, and for my students, they're going to have the choice of kits that have both of these colors, and both of these are made by World of Yarn. They're available. I got them on Hobby Yarn, HOBBII. I don't get any money recommending them, except to say that if you're a person that teaches classes and you're going to use any quantity at all, the more you buy, even if you buy 2 or 4 or 6, with each extra skein that you buy, you're going to be able to get a better discount. So these are They're 100-gram weight skeins, and you're going to need 2 of them to finish your scarf if you want it the length that mine is. I've used them then. Each one of these is 180 yards each. The color that I'm using today is color 8, and that is flamenco. So it is worsted weight. It's a hand plied yarn, which I love. It just makes it art yarn, the way that the colors weave in and out, so you get those great colors. You need knitting needles that are 5 millimeters. The US size on those is 8, and some people even choose to use circular needles, which sometimes are a little bit easier on the elbows going back and forth rather than using them. But the gauge isn't so important as just the look and sealing up the little holes as you go, because you see there's a pattern of increase. There's a strip down the middle and pattern of increase that is just, I think it's really intriguing. You're also going to need a scissors, of course, and a tapestry needle at the end, just so that you can weave your needles in. This is an advanced beginner project, intermediate beginners to advanced beginners, and there's a few skills that you're going to need to know before you start working, and that is how to cast on. And I'm going to show you. And the way that I learned knitting was that I decided to take on this project knowing that I was going to an international college for 4 weeks, and that there would be about 28 people there joining us in London, and all of them from different points in the world. But it was snowing and it was cold, and so I wanted to knit them all a scarf. Well, that's a huge project, and I was glad that I had about 1.5 years in advance. And I learned on YouTube. So just as you're doing and watching this video now, I decided that that was such a great method, because I'm a visual learner as well. I believe patterns are super important because they allow you a way to make anything if you can read that pattern. So you learn it one stitch at a time, one step at a time. But then add in that visual learning element. YouTube videos allowed me to watch and to say, I'm confused, but to watch their hands and then to rewind, watch, rewind until I had mastered what they're doing. And for almost every stitch out there, there are knitting instructors who can make that doable for you, even if you're left-handed, even if you're right-handed, for the different ways that people hold needles, whether that's continental or Nordic or even good old American. So let's start together. We know the supplies that we need. We know that you're going to need 2 skeins of yarn. We're going to use 2 of flamenco, and we're going to start our journey just by setting ourselves up for success. And I'm going to turn myself so that you can see my hands and follow along. When you follow along, I'm going to be reading right from the instructions so that you're going to be hearing what the instructions say and what the stitches are, and then seeing how it's done. So you can repeat that, so you can reverse that. So the setup in the pattern says to cast on 20 stitches. Cast on 20 stitches. Maybe you have a favorite way of casting on. Sometimes I cast on even with a crochet hook. It's a really fast little way of crocheting my stitches onto the hook for something uniform that actually has a little bit of give. For this, it's not so important the type of cast on, but I'm going to start with a slip knot, and then follow me in making a slip knot, and then we'll start our cast on together. A slip knot is made simply by gathering your short end, the end of the yarn, and the longer end. This is the long end, shorter end, right? And I put my finger in that, and I just switch it towards myself. I put both fingers in, and grab the long one and pull it through. And then I have a slip stitch. Let me do that again for you really quick, and then we'll begin our cast on. So I'm holding the long and the short end here. I'm flipping it to the back. It doesn't really matter which way. It does matter which way. You have to go up over the top and towards the back so that you'll be able to then grab the yarn and pull it through. Well, there you have it. Go back. Get that if you don't already know that. And then I'm putting that stitch right on my needles, and I'm going to move to a place so that you can see from the front. So you're looking over my shoulders. And here we go. This is row number 1, the setup row where we're casting on 20 stitches. This is to pick up a knit stitch, you go from left to right, front to back, left to right, front to back. You wrap, and you're always going counterclockwise with every stitch you do, but this is a knit scarf that is made up of knit stitches, but because you knit both sides, you're creating what is called the garter stitch. So it's a bumpily look, as you can see, just full of pearls. All right, so we wrap counterclockwise and then bring it back down. We're bringing it from back to front. Now, what do we do with this? We just slip it on the end. Great. Just slip it on the end. Okay, so you've added 1 stitch there. I have 2, but I want to have 20. So from front to back, go around, and I put it back on. That's 3. Front to back, wrap counterclockwise, and then I put it back on, counting 5, 6, 7. Hope I'm not confusing you with this cast on. You can use your own favorite cast on. Wrap, you go front to back, left to right. Wrap counterclockwise, bring it back through, and then watch how I turn it. I go through the bottom so that my needle is in the right place and ready for the next wrap. Wrap. And how many stitches do I have? Because I want 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So that is your setup row. And you should have 20 different stitches and all fairly even. You want to have kind of a end row that is flat, because you're going to start building these curves into what you're doing. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just knit. So I can do this in front of you, I think, and I think you can catch what I'm doing. What we're doing is knitting. We have 7 rows, and there's a pattern to it. So for those of you who are into math, you're going to love this. And for those of you who aren't, hey, it's only 3 numbers, 8, 6, and 4. 8, 6, and 4. Knit 8 stitches, go back, turn it, go back to the beginning. Knit 4 stitches, go back to the beginning. Knit 2 stitches, no, 4, and then go back to the beginning. Well, let's see how that plays out, because I have a little trick in how we short row and make all these great ruffles without, you've seen some of these before, and they look basically like little spirals. That's a little bit different look. What I was going for was a soft waves, so that you can play with it and you can decide how much of that spiral look you want. You can have it bloom, you can have it spiral, or you can just create the art that you want. So with your needle, go ahead and knit 8 stitches. Knit 8 on row 1, the directions say, knit 8 and turn. Watch how I turn, because turning is important where your thread goes. Your thread goes off to the right side if you're right-handed, to the left if you're left-handed. And to make your knit stitch, you're going from front to back, left to right, front to back. The very same way we cast it on, right? And you're wrapping it. You're wrapping that stitch and then bringing it over to your other needle. So that's 1. And we're doing this, remember row 1 is knit 8 and turn. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're told turn, because we're going to start going back towards the beginning. We're not going to go all the way across the scarf. So what we're doing, and you can maybe look this way and get a clearer picture, is that the yarn should be no longer in the back, but you're going to switch hands. Switch hands. Now the yarn is in the front, and you don't want to knit with the yarn in front. We're going to keep knitting the same way, which means you're going to have to put the yarn in the back. So we knit 8 and we turned, and then we put that yarn in the back. The very first stitch of row 2 says SSP. So you're slipping the first knot, SSP. SSP is slip the stitch purlwise, SSP, which means just go straight through it and slip it over purlwise. And then knit to the end. So you're knitting 7, knit back to the beginning. You don't even have to count. That's row 2. And then we're told at the end of row 2, can you see the shape is changing? It says turn. So we're going to turn our needles. Row 3 says knit 6 and turn. Remember, row 1 said knit 8 and turn. Row 3 says knit 6 and turn. Knit 8 and turn. We're going to remember that. Knit 6 and turn. We're going to remember that. So from the outside, it's always going to be either 8 or 6 or 4, and then we'll move forward. So we're on row 3, knit 6 and turn. Right from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you remember the way we turned before? We just really exchanged hands. When we exchanged hands and we have those 6 knit stitches on the left needle, but the yarn is in front. What did we do with it? We put it in the back. Always put it in the back. Row 4 says, SSP, so that's slip, stitch, purlwise. Just grab it. You're going to slip that stitch purlwise onto your right needle. And then it says knit back to the beginning. So easy. So you just remember when you're doing these short rows, the first stitch from the center is always going to be that SSP, slip, stitch, purlwise. Now you've come back to the center and you see that wedge is growing. So row 4 was to slip, stitch, purlwise, and knit back to the beginning. Now it is to turn. Row 5 says knit 4, then turn. Knit 4, then turn. 1, knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, knit 4, then turn. And what do we do when we turn? We always remember the yarn goes in the back. Always, every time you turn, make sure the yarn is in the back. Row 6 is to SSP. Do you remember what SSP is? Slip, stitch, purlwise. See, if you're making a knit stitch, you're grabbing it from front to back. But if you're making a purl, you actually come in from right to left. So when it says to slip the stitch purlwise, you're really just grabbing it as though you were going to make a purl stitch and slide it onto the other needle. So SSP, right? And then you're just going to knit the rest of the row, which is 3 stitches. So easy, so easy. So now what you have done is you have on this row, row 6, SSP, slip, stitch, purlwise. Then we have knit back to the beginning, and we are to turn, and then our instructions, and you always know you're right if, when you look at it, can you see what has happened? The way you've knit, you've kind of created little groups of 2, 2 here, 2 here, and then you have the others that are waiting for you, because as you go back and forth, keep repeating these 7 rows. That's going to create your soft tides scarf. So row 7 is to knit 20, which means you're going to be knitting all the way across. Now, because you did the SSP, you're not going to have holes in your knitting, where some of the patterns just say knit back to the beginning, and where that sounds easier, what happens is you actually get gaps, little holes in your knitting, and this will prevent that. So that's my little gift to you. Row 7 is knit 20, so we're knitting all the way across, and if as you count, you're going to remember then, oh, okay, it's 20. I know I'm on track. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Brings you all the way to the other side. You can see the increase. You can also see that you haven't left knots in your work, any little holes, any little gaps. And that's really going to make all the difference in your final scarf. It's really going to give it a more finished look. So now what we're going to do is repeat those 7 rows, and I'm going to move through them a little bit faster so that you can go ahead and just repeat. using up both of your skeins of yarn, remembering a few things that SSP means slip, stitch, purlwise, and that you always, every time you turn, remember that that piece of yarn is always in the back or hanging free. So here we are, and we're starting these 7 rows again. The 7 rows, because I told you there was a pattern, row 1 is knit 8 and turn. Row 3 is knit 6 and turn. Row 5 is knit 4 and turn. Remember that, memorize that, because then every row in between that is basically slip, stitch, purlwise, knit back to the beginning. So you see there is a pattern that is easily memorizable. So row 1, if you have the pattern, you can look and you can just see that. If not, maybe while I've been talking, you have written down the pattern. If not, you can do that right now. So row 1, knit 8 and turn. So we are on the other side. We're going to knit 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Row 2, oh, it does say turn, knit 8 and turn. We're switching hands, putting that yarn in the back once again. And row 2 says SSP and then knit back to the beginning, turn. SSP, slip that stitch purlwise, that first stitch, and then knit back to the beginning. You don't even have to count them. And turn. Row 3 was knit 6 and turn. Row 3, knit 6 and turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and to turn, it's easy to just switch hands, remembering to put that yarn and over to the back. Now, the first stitch of row 4 is SSP, so SSP, slip stitch purlwise, and then knit back to the beginning. Knit back to the beginning of the row, and then you're going to turn and get ready for row 5. Turn, you're ready for row 5, which is knit 4 and turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands, get that yarn to the back. And the next row then is row 6. We're going to SSP, slip stitch purlwise. Remember that yarn's in the back. And knit back to the beginning. And we've completed those patterns, those short rows once again. And row 7 then, that odd row is going to take you back over to the other side, and it is simply K20 or knit 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This always helps me to check as well my stitches. If you don't have 20 going across, you're going to have to get back to that point where it's 20, whether that means increasing or decreasing one. Can you see already? You can start to see those soft waves beginning to happen. And if you have yarn that keeps changing color, how great is that? That slow fade from one color into another color. And you're going to just keep continuing this. I'm hoping you're working at it as a knit along. So what I recommend, if you're doing it as a group together, that this is session 1, and you're going to keep going on this with those 7 rows until you have used up, make it at least 2 feet long. And then meet again, having some homework. Use up 1 whole skein. So you're beginning on your 2nd skein. You're going to decide on different lengths. I just used both of my skeins up. So because it is 180 yards each, then you know that the whole art yarn scarf, that soft tides yarn scarf, is going to be made using 360 yards. So keep going, keep going. And if you need to watch again, go ahead and do that. I'm interested. Take some pictures, leave them in the comments. Do this as a knit along, might be a great summer project. Definitely. I know you're not going to be able to make just one. And once you see how they roll up, you're just going to feel so great about that, because you simply start knowing that there's this flat area in the center, and you just roll, 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 and it becomes a beautiful flower in bloom that becomes a present that you're passing on to somebody. Well, God's richest blessings to all of you as you knit. If you have any comments or any questions, go ahead and put those in the comments line. And as well, do take time to connect with each other. There's been a lot of time where we've all had solitude, and solitude is good, and maybe that's time we've used to reassess and reprioritize, and let's not keep cut off from one another. That's maybe what is wonderful about the idea of a crochet along, is the building of relationships and the connections that happen then around the table. So I'll see you soon. I'll make some more videos. And if you want to buy this pattern, remember it's at, all one word, Artist's Heart Project. And that benefits the Salvation Army of Moldova. And I donate back 100% of the profits above the listing cost back to Moldova, forever in my heart.